In the heart of Ajagunal Heights, a bustling city where tinted SUVs roared past street hawkers and glass-walled schools rose like palaces, stood Elite's International Academy, a place where the children of ministers, CEOs, and celebrities came to learn, or at least pretend to. The air was thick with the perfume of entitlement. Teenagers in designer sneakers slouched in velvet-cushioned classrooms, air conditioners humming louder than the teachers' voices. Most of them barely knew the price of bread, only the price of fame. But before the first Porsche rolled into the school gates, before the halls echoed with the snap of gum and fake British accents, he was already there. The janitor. Nobody knew his real name. They just called him Baba Mop. He arrived before sunrise every day, quiet, invisible, wearing the same faded blue uniform, pushing his rickety mop bucket down the marble corridors. His shoes were scuffed, his hands calloused, his back slightly bent. He never spoke unless spoken to, never interfered, never raised his voice, and so nobody noticed him, except to laugh. "Yuck! That man smells like old rags." One girl giggled as she passed him in the hallway. "Maybe he sleeps in the storeroom," another added, wrinkling her nose. Even some of the teachers rolled their eyes when they saw him. To them, he was beneath notice. But they didn't know that Baba Mop noticed everything. He heard their secrets whispered in empty classrooms. He watched which students faked their test scores, which ones bullied the quiet kids, which ones laughed when others cried. He cleaned around them like a ghost, quiet, forgotten, ignored. But his eyes were always open. And deep in his small, dusty room beside the boiler, beneath an old folded mat, was a black briefcase covered in golden dust. Locked, waiting. It was a Monday morning when it started. The joke. 3 senior boys, Kalechi, Doten, and Frederick, burst into the cafeteria laughing so hard they could barely walk straight. "Did you see his socks?" Doten wheezed. "One blue, one green, like some village clown." Frederick nearly spilled his smoothie. "I swear, even my gate man dresses better." The entire table of rich kids turned to look across the hall. There he was, Baba Mop, mopping quietly in a corner, his back to them, as if he hadn't heard. But they knew he had. He always heard. Kalechi grinned wickedly and pulled out his phone. "Let's go viral." He crept behind Baba Mop and snapped a photo, zooming in on the man's socks and his faded mop. Within seconds, the post was up. "Even our janitor needs GoFundMe. Hashtag Baba Mop, hashtag Elites Low Budget." By lunch break, it had 3,000 likes and was spreading faster than wildfire. Some laughed. Some reposted. No one stood up for him. Except one person, Chioma. She sat alone, pushing her food around her tray, eyes burning. She wasn't rich. Her mother was the school's laundrywoman. They lived in a small room behind the staff quarters. She walked up to Kalechi's table. "Delete it," she said. Kalechi scoffed. "Or what? You'll cry about it to your tailor mama." Laughter. Chioma's cheeks flamed, but she didn't back down. "You mock him today, but you don't know who he was yesterday." Frederick mimicked her voice. "Ooh, so poetic. Shakespeare of the ghetto." More laughter. From the mop closet, Baba Mop closed his eyes and said nothing. Not yet. Behind the music room, past the staff toilets and broken water fountain, was a dusty metal door. Rusted. Bolted. Nobody ever touched it. Except Baba Mop. Every day at noon, when the students napped or scrolled through their phones, he would sneak in there with a tiny key tied to his wrist. Inside the room was no mop, no bucket. Instead, it held a sleek laptop, fingerprint locked, a stack of business files and contracts, photos of oil fields, a portrait of a woman and a young boy. The room smelled like paper, wood polish, and old memories. Baba Mop sat on a stool and opened the laptop. Emails flooded in. "Your Dubai shipment has landed. The board awaits your signature. Kindly confirm the $2.4 million disbursement." He typed quickly, pausing only once to look at the portrait. "Almost time, Ada," he whispered. The next day, Chioma found Baba Mop sweeping leaves near the parking lot. "Sir." "Can I ask you something?" He looked up, surprised. "Why do you let them treat you like that? Don't you care?" He smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "Do birds answer every barking dog?" She blinked. "That's not an answer." "But it is," he said. She hesitated. "I think you're more than who they say you are." His eyes twinkled. "Then you're smarter than them." Chioma walked away, more confused than ever. But that night, when she saw a flash of Baba Mop entering the forbidden room behind the music hall, her curiosity grew. And when she saw the briefcase he carried, her heart began to race. On Friday, the principal stood on stage. "We have a special announcement," she said. "Our school is being purchased by a private investor." Murmurs spread like ripples. "You may not know him, but he's been with us every day." Gasps. Baba Mop walked on stage, wearing a sharp gray suit, clean-shaven, confident. The students stared, mouths open. Chioma burst into tears. Kalechi dropped his phone. Baba Mop, no, Chief Okafor, smiled and took the mic. "I was mocked, ignored, and laughed at, but I watched. I waited. And now, this school belongs to me." The hall exploded, but not with laughter, with silence, because the janitor just became the boss. Principal Madame Ease paced around her office in flat shoes that squeaked on the tiles. The complaints were piling up again. Rude students, missing laptops, broken lockers. But what truly unsettled her wasn't the students. It was Mr. Okafor. No, Chief Okafor. Ever since the Friday assembly when he walked on stage in a gray suit and announced he had bought the school, things hadn't felt the same. The teachers whispered behind closed doors. The students behaved better, but for reasons that had nothing to do with school rules. Chief Okafor now walked the halls not as a janitor, but as the boss. Yet, he still wore his faded blue overalls most days, still swept the corridors when no one asked him to. That, more than anything, made Madame Ease uneasy. She closed her laptop harder than necessary. Why is he still doing that? Is this some kind of test? She buzzed her secretary. "Can you let Chief Okafor know I'd like a word, please?" A moment later, there was a knock. The door opened, and there he was. Same calm eyes, same quiet posture. But now the room shifted slightly when he stepped in. "Madam Principal," he said with a gentle nod. She stood, suddenly unsure of her tone. "Chief, thank you for coming. I just wanted to check in. You've been more present lately." "I've always been present, Madame Ease. But now people notice." She forced a smile. "Yes, well, the staff are adjusting. Some feel a little unsettled." He nodded slowly. "Change always makes noise." She hesitated. "And you're cleaning. I mean, you don't have to do that anymore." He smiled faintly. "I do it because I still care. The school didn't change me, Madame Ease. I changed the school." She didn't reply. He gave her a respectful bow. "Have a good afternoon." And then, like always, he left quietly, but not without leaving a message behind. After the meeting, Chief Okafor became even more observant. He watched everything. The teachers' glances, the students' whispers, the shift in tone when he entered a room. He had worn silence like armor for years. Now, that silence saw more than anyone realized. He noticed how Mr. Emeka, the economics teacher, always let the rich students leave class early while marking the poorer ones as absent. He observed Madame Igioma, the guidance counselor, nodding politely to high-paying parents while barely looking up when a mother in faded Ankara entered her office. And he heard things, too. "You know what I heard?" A boy whispered near the lockers. "That Baba Mop used to be a thief. That's why he's always quiet." "No way," his friend said. "I heard he sleeps in the school storeroom. Dude can't even afford rent." They laughed and walked off. Chief Okafor had been standing just around the corner, sweeping slowly. He paused, then kept sweeping. Not with anger, just disappointment. They didn't know. Not yet. One Friday afternoon, as students poured into SUVs and tinted vans, a few select staff members were asked to stay behind for a special meeting. No agenda, no explanation. They gathered in the small ICT room. Madame Ease, Mr. Emeka, Madame Igioma, and the bursar. The air was tense. Then the door opened. A man in a charcoal suit walked in, carrying a slim laptop and a composed smile. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm here on behalf of the school's new executive office." Madame Ease sat up. "Which executive office?" "I thought Chief Okafor." "Yes," the man said smoothly. "Chief Okafor has restructured Elite's International Academy under a new investment group, Okafor Holdings." He opened the laptop and clicked through a few slides. On screen, bold white letters read, "Okafor Holdings, redefining education." Silence fell. Effective immediately, the man continued, "All staff, especially those in leadership, will be submitting detailed reports of their performance over the last 2 terms. Reviews will be based strictly on merit." Mr. Emeka looked like he'd swallowed a marble. Madame Igioma's lips thinned. No one said a word. They didn't need to, because now the janitor had a boardroom, and they worked for him. The staff assembled in the school hall. No one spoke much. There was no buzzing energy, no pre-assembly chatter. Just tension. Chief Okafor walked in. Not in a suit this time, but in a clean black kaftan, polished shoes, and the calm gaze of a man who knew exactly where he stood. He climbed the steps to the stage, adjusted the microphone, and looked out over the faces that once looked through him. "Good morning," he said, voice clear and steady. The silence responded. "My name is Okafor. Some of you knew me as the janitor. But what you didn't know was my story. Every eye was locked on him. I came here not because I had to, but because I needed to understand what's wrong with our system. To see not from the top down but from the ground up. And what I saw broke my heart." He scanned the staff. A few looked away. "But I also saw goodness. I saw students who dared to be kind, teachers who went the extra mile, staff who did their jobs with pride, even when no one thanked them." He paused. "And so today we begin again, not just with rules but with purpose." The teachers didn't clap. Not yet, but they listened, because the janitor was now the voice in the room. He cleared his throat. "Before I came here," he said, "I worked in finance. I was the chief operating officer of a large company in Lagos. I had offices in Victoria Island, meetings in Dubai, and clients around the world." A few staff members sat straighter. Others froze. "But I left it all after something painful happened. My daughter was refused admission into a school. Not because she failed, but because I couldn't afford the bribe." Gasps rippled through the hall. "That day I made a promise. One day I would own a school. A school where no child would be judged by their father's wallet." He looked straight at Madame Ease. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came to study hearts. And what I saw wasn't always encouraging." Several heads bowed. "But I also saw resilience. I saw Chioma, who stood up when others stayed silent. I saw janitors, cooks, and guards who showed more leadership than some of the staff in power." He stepped back from the mic. The applause started slowly, then built, until it became thunder. But in the back, a few hands remained still, because they remembered what they had said. And now, the janitor had keys. Real keys. The next morning, a fresh sheet of paper appeared on the school bulletin board. Effective immediately, all staff will be evaluated based on merit, not years of service or connections. Some teachers scoffed. Others whispered nervously. In the students' group chats, screenshots of the bulletin spread like wildfire. "Bro, this school is a whole movie. Janitor is now CEO? He's coming to our class tomorrow." The spoiled rich kids who once mocked him now sat up straighter. The ones who laughed at his socks now took notes when he spoke. But not everyone was celebrating. "So we just accept this?" Mr. Emeka hissed, slamming his mug on the table in the staff lounge. He was sweeping corridors 2 weeks ago. Now he's in charge of hiring and firing. Madame Igioma snapped. "We have to watch him closely," Emeka said. "Find something. Anything. Get him to slip." "Careful," warned the librarian. "That man sees everything. He doesn't talk much, but he's 10 steps ahead." Emeka smirked. Let's see how far he gets once parents start complaining. But deep down, even he knew Chief Okafor wasn't just a janitor playing dress-up. He was the real deal, and he had a plan. Chief Okafor called for an unexpected assembly. The students gathered, buzzing with gossip and curiosity. He stepped up and smiled. Today we start something new. A student council, not picked by popularity, but by character. Gasped. From now on, your voices will be heard. Every complaint, every idea, every dream. You will have a seat at the table. He invited 5 students to the stage. Not the loudest, not the richest, the most sincere. One was a girl who tutored her classmates without asking for anything. Another was a boy who quietly helped a disabled student carry books every day. The school changed that day, not because of power, but because of purpose. The parents' meeting was packed. Some came out of support. Others came out of fear. The air was thick with curiosity and unease. Chief Okafor stood at the front, dressed in a navy caftan, flanked by a screen showing his new vision for the school. Behind him, a banner read, "Integrity before image." A man in an agbada stood up, clearly upset. So, you mean to tell me a janitor is now teaching our children values? Where's the prestige in that? Chief Okafor didn't flinch. Sir, a man is not defined by his job title, but by the lives he touches. Murmurs spread. A woman raised her hand. My daughter has never enjoyed school like she does now. She says the new owner actually listens. More murmurs, this time of agreement. Emeka, seated at the back, clenched his fist. His attempt to sway the parents had failed. Again. The following week, just after morning assembly, a limousine rolled quietly through the school gates. Students rushed to the windows, whispering and pointing. Out stepped an elderly woman in a flowing wrapper and head tie, regal despite her simple attire. Her back was straight, her step steady. She walked to the gate and asked in a soft but firm voice, "Please, can you call Okafor for me?" Chief Okafor appeared moments later, his face lighting up. "Mama, you came." "Of course," she smiled. "The whole village is proud of you. You didn't just sweep floors. You swept away pride." He embraced her gently, and together they walked through the courtyard. Teachers stood. Students clapped. From that day on, no one saw just a janitor. They saw a man, a builder, a king in overalls. By the next morning, the school corridors buzzed. "Did you hear about the woman in the limo? That's his mother. I swear the janitor has money. I think he owns oil blocks. Nah, he's a secret prince. Watch." Some students stared at Chief Okafor with awe, others with suspicion. In the staff room, the whispers hadn't stopped either. "That man knows too much to be just a janitor," muttered Mr. Anazi, the government teacher. "Maybe he used to be a professor," whispered Miss Beasy, the literature teacher. "Or maybe he's running from something." Only Madame Ease remained silent. She remembered the day he applied for the job. No references, just a firm handshake and eyes that held 1,000 untold stories. She now realized she should have paid more attention. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The library was nearly empty. Chief Okafor, sleeves rolled, was dusting the top shelf of the economics section when a deep voice cut through the stillness. "You still hide behind mops, Okafor?" He froze. Turning slowly, he saw a tall man in a sleek brown kaftan, gold wristwatch gleaming. His face was sharp, smug, familiar. "Alhaji Bello," Okafor said, voice calm. "Still pretending to be poor, I see. You left the boardroom to become a cleaner." "Some places need more cleaning than a boardroom ever did," Okafor replied. Bello laughed. "Does your son even know who you are? Or why you left the company?" Okafor's hand tightened around the feather duster. "Leave him out of this." "Ah," Bello smirked. "So he doesn't know. Well, secrets don't stay buried forever." He turned and walked away, the echo of his shoes sharp against the polished floor. Okafor stared after him, then looked down at the shelf he was dusting. It read, "Leadership and Integrity." A week later, disaster struck. Smoke filled the school kitchen. A faulty gas pipe had ignited a fire, and chaos erupted. Students screamed. Teachers ran. Flames licked the ceiling tiles. No one could find the cook. But before anyone could call for help, Chief Okafor ran straight into the smoke. Eyes burning, he stumbled through the fumes until he found the cook, unconscious on the ground. With strength no one thought he had, he dragged the man out, coughing and gasping. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and began dousing the flames, even as the fire brigade arrived late. The fire was out, the danger was gone, and the students, all of them, were watching. That evening, the school's social media pages exploded. A true hero wears no cape. Thank you, Chief Okafor. He risked his life for us. He didn't even hesitate. But not everyone clapped. In a sleek office downtown, Alhaji Bello scrolled through the post and frowned. He's becoming too powerful, he muttered. It was the last day of term. The school gates buzzed with activity as limousines and tinted cars lined up to pick up the graduating class. And there, by the gate, stood Chief Okafor. In his hand was a simple broom. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. One by one, students came to him, not just to shake his hand but to hug him, to thank him, to ask for his blessing. A year ago, they wouldn't have made eye contact. Now, they treated him like royalty. Even Chioma, now head girl, stepped forward. "Sir," she said, her eyes misty, "can you sign my shirt?" He smiled, took the marker, and wrote just 3 words on her back. "Never stop rising." Then the entire student body, without prompting, began to chant his name. Chief Okafor, Chief Okafor. Even the teachers joined in, even the ones who once mocked him. And as the final bell rang out across Elite's International Academy, Chief Okafor looked up at the sky, the sun casting gold across the school he had once mopped. No suit, no title, just quiet triumph. Because in the end, he didn't need applause. He didn't need revenge. He had done what he came to do, change hearts, rewrite legacies, and prove that even a janitor can own the school. Moral of the story: never look down on anyone. The person you mock today may be the one who holds the keys to your future tomorrow.